Good morning. We want to welcome all of you who are joining us in the Wednesday morning class here at HeartLight Spiritual Center, coming from Charlotte, North Carolina. We want to welcome you that are here. We just finished our I would say chai tea. I love chai tea, don't you? Exercises, and we just want to welcome you that are joining us live today, and you that will join us on the download later. All right. What you heard in the beginning was the awakening bell. We're going to do that again, and this carries, since sound carries intention, we sound, and the intention that it carries is to that parts of ourself that is lying dormant, that is ready to awaken in us. We use such little parts of ourselves. You know, in the ego's world, a little bit seems like the whole, but it's not. So we've not used much of our DNA, we've not used much of our consciousness, we've not used much of our potential, our creativity. It's still lying dormant within us. So the intent of this sound carries awake that part of us that still sleeps in a dormant state. So let's begin by doing that this morning. All right. Well, I dare not get too involved in Connie's notes because they are so thorough and wonderful. You know how that'll work. But let's look at a little bit what our subject is at this time, and I'm trying to follow spirit on a subject and how long that subject goes. When the spirit lifts from it, then we know that we need to go a different direction. So rather than say 6 weeks of this or 12 weeks of that, let's just go with the flow of how spirit is directing us. So what we have started in the last few weeks is basically the shift that we're making from the old paradigm of body, mind, and spirit to everything is energy. So this is the launching point that is the complete undoing and healing of an old paradigm that still validates separation. So if I say body, mind, and spirit, your brain hears three different things. But actually, it's not. It's one thing. It is only energy, which is vibrating at a different frequency. And of course, our simple example of that is for body, mind, and spirit is ice, water, and steam. So they're all the same thing at different temperatures. So now that we're moving out of this last bit of separation into this more deeper quantum definition that everything is energy, and about matter, we've all been wrong. You see, everything started many thousands of years ago with the early Greek philosophers who believed in the fact that there was empty space and there was matter. And then all of a sudden empty space was no longer empty space, but it was an energy and matter, but matter was separate from energy. Now in this third paradigm, everything is energy. There is no empty space. There really is no matter. There's only energy vibrating at specific frequencies. Now, the specific frequencies of the old norm is what gives us the five manifestations called the five senses. So there's a frequency that activates the way the body sees, how the body hears, how the body feels, how the body smells, and how the body tastes. Those are called our sensory system. But now that we're moving beyond that into more intuition and guidance and leadership of higher self and all of this as a complete shift in the paradigm. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to finish up old business and at the same time enter into the new business that is being brought before us today. So just a few things maybe I can touch on here. We talked about how that we can hold a lot of our trauma in what's called the fascia. The fascia of the body is a very subtle watery, energetic web system that holds everything together. It's kind of the glue that holds the house together. You know, if you just want to build your house and just stack up bricks or stones, it's not going to last very long at all. The first wind's going to blow it over. But if you have the mortar that holds each one together, then it becomes a structure that is strong. So the fascia is that part of our physiology that is almost less than physical as we know it, but it's very ethereal, or we could say etheric. And the fact that we get that so early in this whole process of our conception, gestation, and birth, that we also are taking in our environment at that time. And therefore, a lot of things that we would not remember after birth is recorded in the fascia, such as trauma. If we are being formed in our mother's womb in a hostile environment, or not being wanted for some reason, or there's anger, or there's fighting, and there's all that going on around in the environment, we're actually taking that in vibrationally and storing it in the fascia system. So what we believe is the most important thing in starting what is called core healing. There's a difference, it's being healed or fixed because you're broken. But if you're going to start with core root healing, the cause of all illness, disease, sickness, and imbalance, you have to start where it all begins. And it all begins in that subtle fascia of vibration and frequency. You didn't know language when you were being formed in your mother's womb. You didn't know English. You had to learn all that once you're born and become an external physical being. But you are filtering all of this in vibrationally and storing it. So one thing, there's many other ways that you can use things to deal with that subtle fascia area, but one thing is a energy body tuner. And the reason I say an energy body tuner versus an energy tuner, the energy tuner is off the body and the etheric, but a physical one that has weights on it, an osteophonic tuning fork, has a vibration that can be felt on the subtle part of the body. So it makes sense that you are activating the fascia when you use a tuning fork that has actual vibration that can be registered at the physical level. So that's kind of where the story is that we've been talking about. Right now what we're dealing with is our story of how we incarnate. And we talked last week a little bit about the preconception, which tells us that there is a presence or energy that is present at the time of conception. It says at conception there is an energy apart from the sperm and the ova. So that means that initial essence part of you shows up to be a part of the process of forming your next incarnation experience. And that's where it all begins. Everything that occurs during the gestation period and beyond is therefore a part of that which we attracted to ourselves at conception. Now, looking at that on a physical level, we can all understand that, because the minute that conception happens, what is said is your hair color, your eye color, your body type, all of that is physically, genetically written in the chromosomes of your parents and their generations shows up at the moment of conception. But today we know that that's not a fixed thing any longer, because now we understand that's not the whole story. That's only half the story. We thought it was the whole story. We thought we were totally set in stone of what we're going to look like, all the things that we got from the ancestral physical genetics of ourselves. But now we know that wasn't 100%, that's only 50%. Reminds me of a place in the Bible where it is written that the Apostle Paul said, we only know in part, we only see in part, we only prophesy in part. So what's the other part? How about the rest of the story? So we're here to give you the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is that you have 50% of your energetic, genetic material that is based upon environment. It's not based upon nature, but upon nurture. So for a long time, there was that split, which is very easy in this dimension. You know, you're either this or you're that. Everything's in black and white, right and wrong. I think we see too much of that today politically. You know, either you're liberal or you're conservative, or you're this or you're that. And there's many shades to all of these things that I think get left out of that whole story right there. So it's important that we realize that the majority of us is based in these shades that have been left out. So that's called epigenetics, is all. Epi, E-P-I, genetics. Epi is a Greek term that means beyond or above. So beyond your physical genetics and your physical story, those chromosomes of your parents, there is another story waiting to be activated. And that is why we are doing work based upon activation, activating energy, activating aspects of ourself that has been ignored for centuries and generations, that is now ready to be awakened in us. So the fact that this present shows up at the very beginning says that we ourselves are not victims of our life that we incarnate in, that actually we are co-creators. There's creators and there's co-creators. We co-create with the Creator. There's a partnership between the Creator and what has been created. So we want to be a part of that. We want to use our power. We want to use our innate abilities and intelligence, our innate wisdom, to be able to begin to shape or reshape our destiny, individually as well as collectively. So there is that. And it seems that whatever this presence is, it can be called the soul, it can be called the spirit, it can be called so many different things. But it seems that something happens at approximately 20 weeks within this process of the forming of the fetus. And that is called a quickening. And we talked about the quickening. The quickening is a moment of a charge in which that which has been observing the process enters into the process. There is a penetration into the process to be a part of the process rather than the observer of the process. And that is where we have to get back to understand that part of ourselves. That is the quickened part of ourselves. The word quicken is interesting. Of course, I can only give you my experience in biblical studies, but it said, let that same spirit that raised Christ be in you, for it quickens the mortal body. So what's happening is no longer is there a spirit caught in a body, but the spirit and the body are coming together, and there's an activated charge called quickening when that happens. Everybody understand that? So it's no longer the body and the spirit, or the spirit's in the body, and they're two separate things, but now they've merged together in a quickening. And when there's a quickening or a charge, it releases all this wonderful new light energy. And the Essene says that that energy would look like angel wings. If you could see that charge, it would be white light going out like angel wings. And those are our true upper, inner, innate angels that are in us, which are the intelligence, thoughts, messengers that gets us through the maze of our incarnation. So it's very important that we develop our ability to be sensitive to the direction of our higher angels in ourselves. If we do that, then we'll always remain in the right place at the right time. We'll attract the right people into our life. We'll attract the right circumstances, situations, and you'll live in the aligned life. You'll live in the aligned life. And there'll be no coincidences, but everything will work together for a higher good and purpose for your life. But if we tend to not listen to that and we go off into that other part of ourself that we call the pseudo-self or the ego self, the Bible calls the carnal self, whatever you choose to call it, then we go off in all these detours and we make havoc in our life. We make havoc in our life. But the ego says, no, you're innocent, you're the victim, it's them that did it to you. So part of the growing up is to take responsibility. And it takes a real spiritual adult to do that, because it's much easier to blame everyone else and everything else for all your woes. But remember, everything, whatever you perceive as good or bad, right or wrong, has all been co-created by you. So, why do we want to know that? Because if you don't accept that, then you don't empower yourself to change it. If you feel you're a victim to it, then you got to look for somebody on the white horse to come in and untie you from the railroad track. You got to look for the mothership to show up. You got to look for the Messiah to come out of the sky somewhere. And that's what millions and millions of people are looking for, is for that person to rescue and not realize that they themselves are that which they seek. They're a part of it. We're not it, but we're a part of it. And that is this wonderful new so-called epoch or age that we're entering into today, an age of responsibility. So, I think we touched a little bit last week on conception, which is represented biologically in the neck. So let's look at that just a little bit. The neck is a focal point in time, an explosion of energies as the sperm and ovum meet and merge their individual identities into one, creating the potential physical structure of the new being. So every part of your body kind of tells a story of this whole story that we're giving you, how it all happened. You think about the head is connected to the body by the neck, right? Think about that. Now the head represents abstract. Thoughts are abstract. Feelings are abstract. Things that go on in the head are abstract, but the body isn't. The body is solid, it is physical, it is biological, it is manifested, it's something we can see, feel. So what connects the abstract with the manifestation would represent the neck. That's an interesting thing. It is time when all the factors or influences that were going to make us are brought together, the genetic inheritance. And as we said, that's race, time, location, condition of our lives are all set. All these coalesce, each one adding a particular flavor to the whole, thereby forming the blueprint of the being to be. So I want us to understand, we talk a lot about beingness. And who we are is our being. We call it our being. Human being, we say. Humans should not be the being. Humanity should be the becoming of the being. If the being would become human, you'd have a different humanity. You'd have a different biology. But we have not allowed our being to become what it is. Therefore, because we've made our outer package, our physiology, something different than what we were created to be, it's found itself imprisoned in what we have made ourselves to be. So the what I call the internal sacred yearning is not the yearning of humanity, but it's the yearning of the divine within. You think about that. All we do, the ego has us thinking about our yearning, our need, our lack, our pain. But that's not the yearning that I have felt all my life. I thought it was me, the body, but I found out it was the divine in me that was yearning to be set free, was waking up and did not want to be anymore within the prison and the boundaries of my biology and my physiology, but it wanted to outweigh the physical part of me. So it is God's, we call it creator, God, whatever you choose to call it. It's yearning to become what it is. God wants to become what it is. And that is what you give God. I know so many people don't think that we have anything to give a creator, but we do. Or we wouldn't have been created. Why? Why were we created? I mean, was creator just playing around, experimenting? Is the earth a big laboratory in which human life is just this experiment? Or was it done with purpose? I used to ask that in the young years of my life when I was searching so diligently. Why? Why'd you do this? Why would you create? You were everything. You were omnipresent. You are the totality of all love. You are everything. Why would you need anything? Why didn't you just stay being everything? And when the answer came to me, it was phenomenal. I said, because I had become nothing. Even though I am everything, I had become nothing. And I got it. That's the cry in me, is the divine in me to become. And that is what we give back, is we give back this place of becoming. Becoming. Now, in life, we become a lot of things. And that is the nature that we develop. The nature we develop can be a loving nature. Some people are just loving by nature. Some people are everything but loving by nature. People are a lot of things by nature. And you become that because of what life deals you, how you perceive life. All these kind of things develops a personality, a persona of who you become. And you're kind of known by that. You get known by these things that you become. A person who is depressed, unhappy, becomes a person known as being depressed and unhappy. A person who becomes angry over life becomes a person of anger. We even describe ourselves as to what we've allowed ourselves to become. But the answer, and then the ego system is, okay, you've become that, now I'm going to give you a religion to fix it. And that's always the ego's goal, is to get you to fix the illusion. Make it a more better illusion, rather than undo the illusion and make sacred space for the coming of the being to become as it is. And that is so caught in so many religions. I know more about the religion I was raised in, which is Christianity, but there's so many aspects of Christianity that teaches the whole hope is the coming of Jesus, the coming of Christ. Everything is based on that. When I was growing up, that was the hope of the church. That was the hope of people. People who were being mistreated, people who were in the fields, and slavery and all these kind of things. They sang those songs that someday I'm going to be rescued. Jesus is going to come and I'm going to walk on streets of gold. I'm going to live in mansions and all these kind of things. Everybody wanted something to come. And they thought it was going to come from outside of them. And they didn't realize what they was looking for to come was already in them. Right? So even we here in HeartLight and New Thought community must realize that even though we've had this wonderful enlightenment and quickening about Christ in us and as us, that's not enough. Don't stop there. Until that which we have discovered that's in us and as us becomes us, we will never see this world of illusion dissipate itself and bring forth the coming of the kingdom of heaven. Let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. Right? So it's not about getting and doing all the time. Sometimes it's about undoing and losing some of what we've become. And that's the hard part, because that's a sort of a death. When you start letting the part of yourself that you think you are and that you've become based upon the world's forming you, and you letting the world form you, it starts dying, You had to be willing to go into the gap. You got to be willing to go into the void. And that is the most fearful thing that we think there is. And actually, the only thing that fears it is the ego itself. The ego fears its own crucifixion. And that's what that whole story of the cross and the crucifixion is all about. It's when it was the undoing of the illusion, of the illusion. Even death was undone. Everything was undone. And now we don't want to go there, so we put it all on a man on a cross that did it for us 2,000 years ago, so I don't have to do it. So let's just keep putting it all on the icon. And that is changing for many of us as we are beginning to understand this particular thing. The unborn child tends to initiate its own birth process in response to a particular planetary configuration. This mysterious process, the planets and somehow acting as celestial midwives, some kind of signal emanating from the planets may somehow interact with the fetus in the womb. This is why I'm questioning the fact of why we do not feel it's important to know where the planets were at conception as much as at birth. I don't find that being addressed enough to satisfy me. We keep thinking life starts at the birth. Physical life does. But remember my message, life is seeking a living, a few weeks ago? So that really isn't life. Life has to step down to living to enter the physical realm. And whatever lives dies. The only thing that doesn't die is life. Right? And that was my message. That the teacher said, I offer you life and more abundantly. And we do that by raising our frequency. So I don't know. I was a 10-month baby, so nobody really knows their time of conception. But I figure probably it's around February the 3rd. Somewhere in that. That gives me a general idea. If you know how many months that you were, before you were born, would give you an idea to probably get you back to a certain sign and what the planets were doing, so you can understand the influence at conception, not at just birth. Perhaps it is not the moment of birth that selects the future, but rather the future that selects the moment of birth. Isn't that interesting? The potential for everything we are going to be in this world thus appears to be present at the moment of conception and is built into our being. It's built in. It's innate, inherent within our being. So we want to go through the other levels of awareness and how we choose to live our lives. The seeds are all present at conception. How they grow depends upon the amount of gardening and watering we are prepared to do. And again, I still say that's mostly what has been edited out most philosophies and religions, is that process. The process. Most religions I know of anyway, that I've been exposed to, are about the miraculous, the supernatural, or what the Course calls magic. Magic. You pray, you get it. You pray, you get it. And that's why, again, I keep saying this, it was so important to edit out that 18 years of Jesus' life. Because if you can understand that 18 years that's missing in the Bible, you would understand the process of how he got there. And if you can understand the process of how he got there, you can learn the formula how you can get there and do the works he did and even greater. So this is a different time as we have moved from the miraculous and the supernatural to the time of more training, teachings, people who are attracted toward workshops, and those who can teach people different ways of doing things. The how to is very important. So everything is present at the moment that you need. Everything is given to you at the moment of conception. Conception is the bridge between the absolute and the relative, between that which is beyond time, space, and matter, and that which is in time, space, and matter. Crossing this bridge demands a commitment to being here and to particularly being a part and fully in life. In other words, to be conscious in life. Don't be reactive, but be proactive about your life. See every event as an opportunity or a lesson to learn. The physical correspondence to conception is the neck. And here we see a direct relationship, as the neck is the bridge between the abstract, the head, and the physical reality of the body. Breath and food that we take in through the head have to pass through the neck to get to the body in order to maintain our physical existence. I'll just throw this in for fun, but if you were raised like I was in a very literalist, there's a lot of teachings about how that the man is the head of the woman. And somebody came up with a message and said, but the neck turns the head. The woman is the neck that turns the head. So, just as with the conception of any new idea or project, there has to be a manifestation into the physical form or idea. So you wouldn't have anything you're seeing here if it did not start up here as an idea in somebody's mind. Electricity, everything else, everything that you see started out as an idea, but it had to get down here from the thinking to the doing part through the neck. And you know what? There's a lot of neck issues today. I have neck issues. I'm not proud of, but I have neck issues. And I have to look at that. Before the class, we was over doing the Tai Chi, and there's one part that is the neck. And I'm going, whoa. What is it that I don't want to see from a different point of view? Stiff neck means don't want to look at any different point of view than the one you hold. You say, well, I don't know what that is because I'm pretty liberal, I'm pretty free, and I'm pretty open. But it could be at a deeper subconscious level. It could be somewhere in the fascia. It could be somewhere in the story that something got stuck that wants to be corrected on an energetic level of some kind. So the neck is extremely vulnerable, especially as a cutoff point between the mind and the body. For instance, we may feel a disgust or importance of our bodies, perhaps due to having come to a situation that rejected us immediately, such as being conceived during a rape or being a mistake. In which case, we will ignore or reject our physical presence in the same way that we were rejected at the moment of conception. If we are particularly cerebral, if our main energy resides in our heads, we are not especially physical or aware of our bodies, then we are most likely to manifest difficulties in the neck area. There is no real feeling or knowledge about our physical existence, no direct experience of how it works or what it needs. As conception is the point of coming into matter, we might have come in reluctantly, preferring to stay in the absolute rather than come into the relative reality. I guess I did if I was 10 months. I was in no hurry to get here. Problems in the neck area can arise because the energy is not flowing freely due to this mind-body separation and to the lack of commitment to being here in the world. You've heard somebody stiff-necked. There's a place in the Bible that says you're stiff-necked, uncircumcised in heart, and it's called a stiff-necked people. It means people that just won't budge, people that will not look at any different point of view than the one that's straight ahead for them. So that might be something to look into and to ask your higher self and your guidance. Is there anything in me at all, in my story at any level, conscious, unconscious, subconscious, or in my past lives or karmic Akashic records that has to do with times that I was not vulnerable to see other points of view that would have furthered my evolution? And in this moment, I receive the healing of that now. Just do something like that. Don't always work with what your five senses knows and sees. Go deeper. All right, let's look at post-conception. Therein is a very short time after conception, the single cell has not only divided many times over, but has traveled into the womb and made its home there. It then begins to change shape and is elongate, forming what is called a primordial streak. Now this gets really important, which is the first growth of the head and spine. As the fetus develops, it goes on to resemble all forms of animal life. A sperm looks just like little reptiles. There's a place in the form of the fetus in which there are no fingers. There's paddles, like amphibians, like frogs and things like that. All forms of animal life, eventually emerging as a human. This process is described as ontological recapitulating phylogeny. There is debate about this, but I learned it long years ago under Barbara Marx Hubbard, actually, that ontological recapitulating phylogeny is just a fancy word for the story of evolution. That you go through that. You go through the whole story within that 7 to 10 month period before you're born. You are and emerge as the human. In other words, we have within us all of, it says creation, but it's formation. And we pass through the whole process of evolution to reach our human form. This in itself shows us how we are truly one with all life. We all come from the same story of evolution. Post-conception consists of the first 4.5 months of the gestation period, during which time the fetus is primarily focused on itself and its development. It is barely moving, so it has not yet encountered the fact that there is anyone or anything else present other than itself. The fetus does not distinguish between itself and its environment. In its mind, there is only one, and everything in the universe is an aspect of that one. This is an extremely inward time, a period of intense development within the fetus, forming the individual. The individual. This time of development corresponds to the development of the inner levels, where there is no connection with or awareness of anything existing beyond itself. It is the relationship between myself, and I. And I. So actually, we really maybe too much give the ego a bad time. But there is a place for the ego in the story. The true ego. You know, to make ego simple, it is identity. That's all it means. So either you have identity or you have an identity. Either there's parts of you that is your true identity, who you truly are, or there's parts of yourself that you have become and allowed yourself to be formed. And that's the pseudo-identity. And so you have the true identity, you have the pseudo-identity. Mostly what we talk about today in third-dimensional language is the pseudo-identity. Because it doesn't matter. The only way that I think we can correspond with each other in language is we need this to make that. In other words, if we did not speak, if we not have in our language a little about that's dark in the language, we would not understand what is light in the language. And there are three aspects that makes the human drama in the mind what it is, and that is going to be the victim, the hero, and what's the third one? The what? The hero. I know these. Okay, you got the hero, rescues her off the railroad track, and the villain. Okay, it's the villain that put her on the railroad. I'm thinking of this Simon Legree story, you know. She's tied to the railroad track by the villain, and then the hero and the white horse comes in and saves her. That's kind of how language goes, if you really think about it. So even in New Thought, the story still needs something to contrast so that we know what is real and what is not real. So therefore, most of us kind of threw out the religious idea of Satan, the devil, and we became more up to date, I guess, with Jungian psychology idea of ego, superego, the ego, and the ego became the new devil. And they're all meaning the very same thing. But at least talking more psychology took us a little bit more out of religious language into a different language of talking about the ego self, the ego self. So anything that's in the counterfeit world has a reality in the real world. So there is a true ego or identity. There's a false ego or identity. Okay? So I think what we're going to find out, if we haven't, is that we are probably all of those, playing those roles for ourselves. I can certainly be my own adversary. I can be my worst enemy. No doubt about it. And I can be the best savior. And I can be easily the victim. Yeah. But I can be all those. I can play those out. What Shakespeare says that we're what? Actors on the stage, playing these parts out. So these are just masks that we wear. We can be angel, we can be devil, we can be savior, we can be whatever, playing all these things out. But we project it out on other people and other circumstances and things like that. So, okay. So the post-conception is about the story called ontological reproducible phylogeny, or the story of our evolution. Now, I'm repeating myself about this, but I want to make it very clear of where I came up with the word crelution. Crelution came into my consciousness at the point that I realized what had evolved for millions of years, for what, 4.8 billion years or wherever they say it, that matter has evolved on this planet, finally came to a place of evolution to evolve to a place in which it evolved into consciousness. Now that changed everything because it took a long period of time and times to get mankind to become a conscious being. Man is not conscious. Man are very unconscious. Man are reactive. Man just tends to act out life in some way. And those who did end up being conscious became the Buddhas, the Jesuses, the great teachers, the books we read, the people we study, the first flowerings, I call them, of the harvest that showed up, because the only difference in them and us is they became conscious. They were the first of consciousness to show up in human evolution. And I think people have moved further and further away from this one teacher idea and one philosopher, because I think people themselves are becoming more conscious. And the more conscious the individual comes, the less need that they have at some point to put all their eggs in that basket of one guru, one teacher, one person, or one religion, or one church in some way. So that's why you see that diminishing somewhat in the world, is because of consciousness is showing up. So what I'm saying is that evolution drove itself. It was very slow. But when consciousness came into evolution, then consciousness started driving evolution. And that meant that something which the Course calls the collapse of time frames, time, can be done through consciousness. In other words, you don't have to wait for time to get you there. You can actually be conscious in time and move time consciously. And I don't know how we can not see that in our own worlds as to why we are where we are in our consciousness and have most family members and friends that are not. People you grew up with all your life. Why did you flower out of that tribal consciousness? Everybody understand what I'm saying? Most of you do not think like most of your family thinks. If you do, you are tremendously blessed. But most of you have people you grew up in school or friends in your life or family members that just don't get you. Like, what are you into? Right? So that didn't just happen once in a while, and as Buddha or Jesus or any of the others, now it's springing up all over as people are becoming a collective consciousness. So it was absolute, the marriage at that moment of evolution and creationism came together into a new path that I call crelution. Crelution. That creation is creating evolution, not evolution is trying to create consciousness. So this is a tremendously powerful crossroad and cross point in consciousness for the world. And the world is not handling it well because there's no model for it. There's no teachings, the religion, the churches. I mean, look at all of the systems. There is just no model for the new paradigm. And people are out there floundering, trying to find out what is going on. What's happening? They're ungrounded. They've lost their center. Their center was the church for many, many people, or the culture. Many people had most of their identity based upon the culture they were raised in. To be African American, to be Jewish, to be European, to be all of these different was huge. It's bigger than it is now. There's less intensity in that. People are crossing those lines, and we're seeing more diversity. trying to emerge. And those who don't get that are fighting that because they are afraid of it. And they're afraid of what is awakening in themselves. And they're projecting upon them. They're trying to take our rights. They're trying to take our freedom. They're trying to change our world. They're trying to do all these kind of things when it's what's awakening up in them, but they don't know how to define it. But that's good, because when they don't know how to define it, it will define them eventually. And that's what's going to happen. Things are not going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. I know it looks like it, but at some point, something is going to rise in the human collective psyche that's going to redefine what it means to be human in this third dimension. So let us find hope and vision in that, because that's important. So I ask, why have I been guided to even read and talk about this whole subject? Because I don't think it's about what happened so much as what's getting ready to happen. It's not about your individual physical births that you've been through, but it's about the collective rebirth of humanity. We're laying a new pattern here. I hope you get that. I don't mean to be dragging you back all the time to all this past, but you can understand they gave us a pattern. Give us a pattern of how that we can rebirth. And I think exactly what I'm talking about that happened is happening right now in the world, in the story of humanity itself. I think there is a quickening. I think you're a part of a quickening. I think many of you had an individual, but I think the individual quickenings are coming together to reach critical mass, to have a collective quickening. I believe that. I believe that. I believe there's going to be that, what Barbara Marx Hubbard called this universal Pentecost of in the upper room, and a great sound coming out of heaven, and the cloven fire standing upon the heads of the people, as every man, all of a sudden the scales drop from their eyes, and every man knows every man and every person in their own language. What a great thing that must have been for those 120 people who were told to go into Jerusalem and just sit there and wait. They didn't know what they were waiting for. And it was out of every known nation of the time, 2,000 years ago. And these nations didn't like each other. Some with war with each other. They disagreed with each other. But they all was called into the upper room of consciousness to wait. Wait for what? We have no idea. The Bible says they tarried. It means to wait. And suddenly, and I'm telling you, one of these days you're going to wake up and it's going to be like no other day. You're going to feel this expectancy, like I don't know what's getting ready to happen, but something's going to happen. And that day that they went, suddenly there came a sound out of heaven. Came a sound, and it was a sound of a rushing mighty wind. And the cloven tongues of fire set right upon their third eye. And all of a sudden, terrestrial languages of culture dropped away, and the language of universal spirit started speaking through them to each other, and all of a sudden they understood each other. Beyond culture, beyond difference of religion, beyond difference of race, beyond different political, which was huge back in that day. The Sanhedrin courts of politics was huge in these days. Between the Jews, the Gentiles, the Romans, all of that was going on. It was not an easy time any more than this is an easy time. These things happen when it's the most uneasy of times, when it's the most upheaval of times. In the most hopeless of times, suddenly a sound comes out of heaven. A frequency, a vibration comes out of heaven and dissolves the chains that enslave us to the lower dimensions of reality. Oh my goodness, time is gone again. So, in wrapping up today, we know there is a presence before there is a conception. That presence is entering in to the process of orchestrating that incarnation. Contracts are entered into, agreements are made, reviews are done. In other words, when you come in and are born as a conscious child, everything has been set in you you need to live the whole life. But because we have no modeling to teach us how to hold that, children are taught from the time they get here to not be themselves. They're rewarded for not being themselves. They're rewarded for not embarrassing us. When you hold back, you get ice cream. I'm so proud of you that you didn't embarrass us in front of the company. That you didn't cry when you felt like you needed to cry. You held it in and held it in and held it in and held it in. Until pretty soon you become a candidate for the world's systems of religions and cultures to form you in their image and in their likeness. I'm convinced that all stories of slavery from all peoples of the world is only the story of the slavery of the divine in human condition. Let us pray and affirm. Divine Holy Spirit, whatever it is that you're saying to us in what we're attempting to say, let it be heard in the recesses of our soul, in the inner places of our heart. Let us realize that the head is not separate from the body. Thought is not separate from manifestation. But the neck represents the bridge. Let us be the collective neck right here at HeartLight, who turns in directions to look at every point of view, to not be stuck in one religion, not even new thought. That we look at all of the different teachings and philosophies, and most of all, that we look into that which is coming, that eye hath not seen nor ear heard. I know this is a challenging time for millions of people in the world, and listening to us who maybe are choosing not to go and be with their families this Christmas. But let us find out what Spirit would say to this time in our lives. Let us let go of the resistance of old patterns and realize that sometimes it isn't what is the most important is to hold on what was, but let go to what is becoming. If we can't go and travel and be with who we want, let us use this time for reflection, contemplation, a time of tuning ourselves to the higher frequency of the voice, of higher dimensions, speaking to us in higher octaves of information. We are energy beings. There is no separation between the body, the mind, and the spirit. We are one truly energetically. Therefore, we're connected to everyone, everywhere today. And we reverberate this intention and prayer and affirmation from HeartLight Center at 7300 Mallard Creek Road to the north, the south, the east, and the west. Let the winds of this planet take it around the world. To them who are saying there's got to be a better way. So it is. Amen. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your support to keep the class going. And Sunday morning will be, at this point, a very special Sunday morning as far as I know. And that will be our minister of music here, who is a wonderfully talented creator, producer, musician, who is going to do a wonderful production for us Sunday. I don't know yet. I have not heard. I've not heard either way. So we'll just keep going forward. But if not, we'll be here on Sunday morning, either way. But I know he has a wonderful production planned for you for Christmas. It's going to be a different point of view of Christmas, but that's what we do here. We try to be unique. So come and be a part of that. If you want to get here and get a seat, make sure you get a seat in here. You must get here. I would get here around 11 o'clock or so. You can join next door, or you can stay on the website at that time. So anyway, that's Sunday morning, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you for your continued support to HeartLight. And again, I just want to thank everybody for all the wonderful things you did for my birthday. Things are still coming in from people all across the country, and it's been overwhelming almost. I guess just Facebook just goes out so many people that you didn't know even you had any connection with. But and that I'm going to give it a thumbs up for that, for how it does connect us with people of our past. So blessings. If you want to be a blessing to HeartLight, you can do that on the website, or you can do it through PayPal, or send it to 7300 Mallard Creek Road here in Charlotte, 28262. And we appreciate it so much. Thank you. Until our next time. All right, so we got a lovely...